Foot Official, and today we have a really special guest with us, Mr. James Buttler, right from England, for us to talk about India versus England. And today you can ask all your questions. I'm also really excited because he's one of my favorite podcasters all around the globe. So yes, I'm also really excited to have him today. And my co-host today is Archisman Bhaiya. Yes, welcome, James, sir.
Yeah.
Anav, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for that introduction. That's very kind of you.
Okay, Arnav, you can go ahead with your questions because I have talked with James, sir. So it's your turn today. I will be keeping a bit silent, and you can go on.
You just make sure you keep these questions nice and friendly, Anav. Nice and friendly.
Yeah, so we are gonna talk about India versus England, obviously, as it's one of the trending topics and one of the biggest series going on right now. And my first question to you is when England are playing, it's sometimes what was the need of them? We all know how fired up Indians get when you poke them or something like that. Especially when your captain is Virat Kohli, who is so fiery, and the whole team is such an aggressive team. If you poke one person, the whole team will come at you. So, what was the need of England also indulging in those fights? And I think the main reason they lost that game was because of that. Because had they not done all of that, and had they just focused on playing the game normally, and had they just focused on taking wickets and not be so personal and everything, they should have won that game. So what are your views on that?
I think you nailed it. I think that England got sidetracked by all of the kind of the stuff going around the edges, and took their eye off the fact that they actually needed to take some Indian wickets to control that match on the final day. And you're quite right, Virat Kohli, he wears his heart on his sleeve, doesn't he? He's an up and at them kind of cricketer. I know that some of the Indians love that. I know that some of the Indians aren't quite so keen, but I quite like it. I mean, I think sometimes he goes too far. I don't like it when he gets in the face of an umpire and maybe gets a little bit too far. It might be that he's just saying to the umpire, "I really like you. I agree with all your decisions," but just the way he kind of holds himself sometimes. His demeanor is quite aggressive, and I don't like that. But I love the way that he is passionate about the game. I love the way that he loves Test cricket. I love the way that he speaks up for Test cricket as well, because I think that's important. When you get somebody of his profile saying that Test cricket is the pinnacle and that it should be looked after, then that's a really good thing in my view. And I love the way that he had the team on the edge of the pitch at Lord's, and he was basically saying to them, "I don't want to see any smiling in front of the English faces. I want to see kind of intensity, and I want to make this 60 overs hell for England." And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And I think England got, as you suggested, got a little bit sidetracked by all of that noise and all of the Jasprit Bumrah stuff and everything, and would have been better off just concentrating on their own game. I felt that they were, to a degree, looking for a little bit of revenge to try and get one back on Jasprit Bumrah. The guy averages 3 in Test match cricket. He's not a great batsman. And they made him look like a great batsman. And I think you saw in Joe Root's comments after the game that he probably thinks, looking back at it, that they got that wrong. And Joe's an honest individual. He'll front up to it and he'll crack on. And you'd like to think that England will learn from that and try and ignore the noise around the edges and just concentrate on winning matches. But there's no guarantee that if England had knocked India over cheaply on that final morning, they would have won that Test match. But they'd have had a lot better chance than they did by getting involved with the Jasprit Bumrah stuff and setting the field back for Jasprit Bumrah when he averages 3. I thought was a little bit silly. Yeah, you bowl the top of off stump, you look for his outside edge, and you try and take his wicket. And they allowed him to look like Viv Richards or Brian Lara rather than Jasprit Bumrah. And that was obviously a mistake, wasn't it? But I'm all for passionate cricketers. I'm all for a little bit of toe-to-toe stuff, but just as long as it doesn't go a little bit too far. Yeah, there is a limit to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So one question that comes to my mind, leave that Test match aside, and also we'll be asking questions about that Leeds test coming up in 2 days. I just want to ask you a question. Do you think the 100 scheduled in between this fantastic test series, I mean, it's a high pressure test series, do you think scheduling the 100 has affected English cricket? My point is, I mean, is it the wrong time to put such a brand, especially when there is a very high profile India versus England series going on? And do you think this is affecting the test cricket? What are your opinions? Because I know it may be an unpopular opinion, but somewhere down the line, I don't see the reason of scheduling 100 in between such an important test series, and when the World Test Championship is on the line.
You follow me on Twitter, don't you? You know what my views on the 100 are. I'm not a fan of the 100 at all. I think that the 100 coming in has come in for the right reasons. Yes. In that they want to grow the game, they want to get new audiences interested in cricket, and they want to try and keep cricket sustainable in the long term. I just think
the wrong time. I guess.
I just think the 100 is the wrong format for that, and they could have done it a different way. But I think the structure of I think even the ECB have suggested this season that they agree that the structure of the summer is wrong. There is no way. I mean, for me at the moment, England against India is as big as it gets. India are right up there as one of, if not the best test side in the world. If England are going to be serious about being in that same bracket in terms of test cricket, they've got to take on India and be competitive. And I think it makes it a little bit of a nonsense when you get somebody like Moeen Ali coming out of the 100 into a test match, then hopping back into the 100 and then hopping back into a test match. And the fact that there haven't been any first-class games in the Championship played from, I think, the 11th of July through to the 30th of August, which is pretty much the bulk of this series. Because usually you see a player that might be struggling for form, hops back into his county to try and get some 4-day runs, and you see some people staking a claim for test selection. If the test team's not doing very well, you get a batsman scoring a lot of runs, or a bowler taking a lot of wickets and maybe putting their name in the frame. There's none of that going on at the moment, and the structure of the summer is a mess in England, and they need to get that right. Because if we're serious about if we park the 100 as being a problem as a format, if we're serious about white ball cricket, if we're serious about red ball cricket, there's got to be a balance between the two. They've both got to be given prominence. They've both got to be looked after. They've both got to be marketed, and they've both got to be played the right way. And they both need the domestic structure underneath them to be supporting the international team, not kind of almost fighting against it. And I think this summer, the lack of Championship cricket during July and August, which are the two of the nicest months in England, in terms of weather, or generally speaking, global warming and everything apart. So they need to have some Championship cricket being played at this time of the year. It's a nonsense to not have it underneath a series as big as this one. I mean, I think for most England fans, the Ashes is probably always going to be seen as the best, regardless of how good the teams are. But India are a cracking side, and to underestimate them in a way, coming to this country is wrong, isn't it? You need to have your strongest team out there who have got the right cricket behind them. I know people will fire back by saying, well, a load of the English team played county cricket in front of the New Zealand series and they lost the New Zealand series. That to me isn't the point. You've got to give your cricketers the best preparation possible to play that format, and at the moment they're not doing that.
Okay, what is the first thing that comes to your mind after the 100 has been completed? I mean, is it successful, or do you think there is a lot of things that can be changed? Because yesterday only we did a show if 100 was successful or not. And do you think it will be able to challenge the IPL? So what's your opinion after the completion of the first season of the 100?
My first thing that springs to mind after the 100 has been finished is thank goodness for that. Let's get on with the rest of the season. To be honest, I don't think any competition will ever rival the IPL, because India's different. India's got a different climate. It's got a different culture. You've got 1.4 billion people, the majority of which love cricket. You could roll out 12 people off the street to play at a ground, and you'd probably get a full house for it because people are just passionate about the game. And there's a different culture in England. You know, you've got people like me that love cricket. You've got people who have got other interests in football and whatever, you know, rock concerts or whatever are their main source of fun. So you are competing for a totally different kind of non-captive audience, really. Whereas in India, you've got a captive audience. And in India, when you started the IPL, you could obviously they're in the cities, and you could call them anything you like, but you stick MS Dhoni in the side, and then all of a sudden people will fly along to it. You stick Virat Kohli in another side, people will fly along to it. The allegiances grow very quickly. In England, the history of the cricket is that for 150 years, give or take, the 18 counties have been the bedrock of English cricket, that first-class structure. Obviously, white balls come into play, the T20 blasters come into play, but they've all involved those 18 counties, whereas the 100 comes in as 8 totally separate sides playing from the cities. I think it's obviously, as I say, the right motives with the 100 to look for a new audience and to grow cricket and to make the kids interested. Not got a problem with that at all. Not got a problem with the standard of cricket in the 100. There's been some entertaining games. I just think it's the wrong vehicle to do it. And I'm kind of fighting a losing battle because the 100 has been adopted. But my fear is that because the 100 takes centre stage, and if it is successful, the ECB will plough the money into that. They'll plough the attention into that. They will market that. ECB are quite good at actually pretending something is amazing when it's not. You see a lot of commentators on the BBC and on Sky saying that's the best catch ever or that's the best innings ever when it's blatantly not. It's a good innings, but it's, you know, the hyperbole around the 100 has been really quite over the top, I think, at times. If you've got a successful product, you throw it in front of an audience and you let them decide whether it's great or not. You know, if it's good enough, it'll stand on its own 2 feet. You don't need to ram it down people's throat that this is fantastic. So I have real concerns about the future of cricket in England, and if you make the 100 the kind of the focal point of the summer, you, by virtue of that, you downgrade everything else. It's just the natural course of things. And if that's making you all of the money and that's how you see the future, then the 18 counties, I think, are under threat as an 18 county body. The county cricket teams need to stand on their own 2 feet. They need to be businesses. They need to be professional, and they need to be as good as they possibly can be. And there's an argument to say that some of them aren't, but they've all been around a long time. They've all invested a lot into the sport. They've all done a lot for cricket. They've all produced international players. And I think they need to be respected a little bit more than they are at the moment. So that's my concern with the 100 coming in. The fact that there's a few kids that have been turned on by the 100 is a great thing. I'm not ever going to knock that, because, you know, for the future of the game, you need the next generation. You need the Arnavs of this world to be getting excited and to be cricket fans in 30 years, 40 years time. But there are also, with the T20 Blast, there's families go to that. There's that the audience for the T20 Blast has grown year on year, and you obviously, by virtue of that, you've got new kids, you've got new families, you've got new audience, new supporters coming into that competition too. And I think the best way forward would have been to rejig the T20 Blast, get a Premier League as a top division, and to get that on free to air. The women's game's been superb. The women's 100 has been brilliant, and it's a platform that's given the women a lot of exposure, and that's been a real positive. The only problem with that is that the women's game doesn't get that exposure without the men's game to kind of ride off the back of, and that's not the right thing, but it's just the way of the world. The men's game is the one that gets the most attention and gets the most money in, and you wouldn't get a lot of the TV companies investing in just a purely a women's 100 competition. But I think there's a lot of things that need to be ironed out with it, and it's here to stay for the foreseeable. I can't get too excited by that, I'm afraid.
Okay. Before moving to Arnab, enough of 100. We have discussed a lot, especially when not a lot of people are liking about the 100. Before moving to Arnab, we'll be discussing, of course, about the Leeds Test. Just final question from the Lord's Test. I mean, apart from what Arnab asked you, that yes, there was something called mental blockage when there was a partnership between Sami and Bumrah that affected England, of course. But whatever the other regions where England got it wrong, because they had a upper hand, and not a lot of time we have seen in Test matches team come back from that stage. Many are comparing it with the Gabba in what happened in Brisbane. It is another type of comeback. Answer this question. And the other question, how do you rate Joe Root, the captain, versus Joe Root, the batsman? I mean, there is a lot of talk about Joe Root, the captain, going around. So, what have you to say about this topic?
Where did England get it wrong? As your first question. Obviously, what Arnav brought up is the main thing for me, because I thought, to be honest, I thought during that Test match England played really well. I think they fought back after India had posted a good score. They fought back with runs. Joe Root obviously getting the majority of those, which is kind of fairly common for England at the moment. And I thought they bowled quite decently throughout. And all the way up until that fifth morning, they were probably favourites to go on and win the game. So you can't really say it's a bad English performance. It was a bad English hour that turned the ascendancy across to the opposition. So I don't think. I think there's a lot of kind of reaction to that Test match that England are awful. There are lots of question marks throughout that England tide, and there are things that need to be made better. But I think as a performance, it was probably 80 out of 100, wasn't it? It's just the other 20 let them down. In terms of the Joe Root question, I think Joe Root is playing as well as anybody in the world at the moment. He's far away the top run scorer in Test cricket this year. I used to work for Yorkshire. I've known Joe to various degrees since he was a teenager, and he's always been driven. He loves cricket, and he has always worked really hard at it, and he's always been a very, very good player. But he's rinsing every last ounce of performance out of his game at the moment, and he's looking really good. He's looking really balanced at the crease. He's batting as well as I say, anybody around in that format at the moment. As a captain, I don't think if Joe was alongside me here, I don't think he'd say he's the finished article. I don't think he would say he's the perfect captain. I don't think anybody's the perfect anything, really. You're always trying to improve. You're always trying to learn. You're always trying to get better. You learn from the experiences in that job. You probably get people that are slightly more instinctive as a captain, and they feel the game a little bit more, and are able to therefore see what's happening next. I'm not sure Joe's got that fully. I don't think Virat Kohli's got that either. You look at Virat Kohli as a captain, I think he follows the ball with his field placings. I don't think he's ahead of the game as a captain, and I don't think Joe Root is ahead of the game as a captain. I didn't like the tactics that Joe used when he was putting men back on the fence to Jasprit Bumrah. And I don't like, it's a general thing in Test match cricket. I don't like it when a batsman, whether it's Jadeja or Pant or whoever, is batting with the tail, when you put the field back to the batsman and you gift them runs so that you can then have a go at the bowlers. Just bowl proper cricket balls. If the batsman hits a six, it's a good shot. But they're also giving you the chance to get them out as well. And obviously, if that continues for 15, 20, 30 minutes and the game's running away from, maybe change your tactics there. But I think your initial focus should be to try and get that batsman out too. Obviously, you got more chance of getting the tail out, but Jadeja was batting with the tail at Lords. He'd not hit a shot in anger. He'd been defensive. He'd been leaving the ball all morning. And then when the tail came in, all of a sudden they started giving him runs and trying to attack the tail. As it happened in that instance, it didn't actually affect England because Jadeja didn't really bat very well with the tail, and the tail fell apart because it's a very long tail. Well, it should be. Obviously, in the second innings, it didn't look quite so long. But I don't think Joe's perfect. But the other factor to that is that there isn't really an obvious replacement for Joe Root. If Virat Kohli turned around today and said, I don't want to captain the Test side anymore, you've got probably 4 or 5 potential replacements there who are established in that Indian side, who could just take it over fairly seamlessly. You've got your Rahanes, your Rohit Sharmas, your Rishabh Pants even, who are there waiting in the wings. I don't think there's anybody in that England Test team who is in that kind of position. So Joe Root has got it fairly easy because there's nobody really breathing down his neck as an obvious replacement for him. I think Joe Root's a really good captain. You look at his record. It's as good as any England captain, pretty much down the years. His win percentage, etc., is pretty decent. There are always going to be things you get wrong as a captain. There's always going to be times where you put a fielder in a position and the catch gets taken. There's going to be other days where you put a fielder in a position and the ball goes where you've just moved him from. You're always going to get that as a captain. But I think on the whole, I'd say out of 10, he's probably a 7, something like that. He's not excellent. He's not perfect, but he's not bad.
Exactly. Arnab, now you can ask some questions related to the Leeds test.
Yeah.
I mean, you can ask about the weather, the pitch. Then I will be asking it.
Yes. So in Leeds, when you talk about the third test, what do you think should be the playing 11? Like, do you have any changes in both the teams of India and England both? In England, there will be a few changes because Sibley has gone out of the test squad and everything. So what do you think should be the ideal playing 11 for both the teams?
I think England will go with Hasib Hamid up to open rather than at number 3, which is his opening position for Nottinghamshire. David Milan looks likely to come in at number 3. Root will stay at 4, and then from there, it'll be Bairstow, Joss Buttler, etc., Moeen Ali, and then whatever bowlers they think are the best for that surface. The Headingley surface is was always used to be known as kind of a seamer's paradise. It was that kind of vibe where you could play your medium fast medium bowlers and they'd get a load of joy on there. But it's not like that anymore. The modern Headingley is different. I don't know why. They built a new pavilion. They cut down some trees for doing it. There's all kinds of suggestions as to why. But, grounds play differently, don't they? And Headingley's changed a little bit, and it's now a decent batting track and can often take spin later on in the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ashwin came in for India to alongside Jadeja. He adds to their batting as well, reduces that tail, because I described in that first test match the tail of 8, 9, 10, 11 as being almost like 10, 11, 12, 13 or worse, because they are, or they should be, 4 batsmen that you can get out cheaply. So there is that issue with India that if they lose a load of early wickets, there isn't too much to come lower down. And that puts a little bit more pressure on the likes of Pant and Jadeja, doesn't it, at 6 and 7, than if they know they've got a few more people to come that can hold a bat. So I wouldn't imagine India are going to make wholesale changes. Maybe one seamer out and Ashwin in at max. For England, I would imagine that the bowlers will be largely unchanged. It depends on the fitness of Mark Wood. There's a number of question marks around his fitness and his shoulder, isn't there? But I think generally speaking, I think Moeen Ali did okay coming into that test match at Lords. So he deserves to continue. And I think England will be, other than that change towards the top end, will be not too far different.
Yep. So now let us start taking our viewers' questions. So first of all, Yakshit Kotian is asking, on one hand, Root is a very highly paid cricketer due to his test status, and on another hand, 100 is scheduled in between an important test series. So he is a little bit confused about what is ECB's first priority. Yeah,
we discussed that. And
so am I. I'm confused about what the ECB's first priority is as well. I mean, for me anyway, they're interested in looking after all forms of the game, like I said, with an equal sort of sense of priority. I mean, I don't know if you have sticks of rock in India, but when you go to the seaside in England, they sell these sticks of rock that have got swirly patterns through them. You get stripes of red and white or something, and that's how I see a season. You get the stripes of the red and the stripes of the white. You get bits of one day, you get bits of test matches, and you kind of build your structures to support each format. And I think the ECB have, like I say, have admitted that they got it a little bit wrong this summer. Hopefully, if they're serious, then next year's fixture list will look a lot different.
Okay, the next question is from Royal Dung, and he is one of your fans who says, "Hi James, long-time listener of the Cricket Badger podcast." So we have got fans of James here also, and let me tell you guys,
hello.
Okay. Then I guess there is a question from
What
Tech,
is the
what is
difference
the
in
difference?
domestic structure of India and England?
I obviously got the Ranji Trophy in India. I mean, like I say, I think the way the advantage that India have got is that your climate is pretty decent, and you it's kind of there's very few games that get completely rained off. In the IPL, there's only a handful, I think. I mean, it happens. You get rain in India, obviously, but not quite the same as in England. And it gives obviously the BCCI the ability to play the IPL in that window where there's not a huge amount of other cricket being played. And then you've got your domestic structure that goes underneath that. So, whereas in England, we really do have quite a finite little window in the summer where from April, May through to September and increasingly October, everything's shoehorned in and all formats kind of have to try and kind of mesh together. And like I said, they haven't got that structure right this summer, but there's the argument about whether there's room for another format, the 100 coming into the English domestic structure. Is there actually room for another format? I mean, it seems bonkers to me that England have just won the 50 over World Cup, and yet the Royal London One Day Cup, which is the 50 over competition in England, has been almost downgraded to a second team tournament that runs underneath the 100. Something's got to give at some stage. I mean, we keep talking about players' welfare and mental welfare, and if you're a player that plays all formats at the moment, you get very little time in your own bed with your own family. We've seen Josh Buttler coming out today saying that he's taking the IPL off, and unless things change with the Ashes, I think he's thinking about giving that a swerve as well. And you'd never have got, going back a few years, you'd never have got any English player. People would have been crawling across the airport tarmac to get on the plane to go to Australia on a test tour. And and it's nothing against Josh Buttler. It just kind of shows you the kind of pressures they're under as players. They're kind of flitting from one format to another, from one country to another, in different hotel beds every night. Zoom calling their family rather than sitting around a table with their family. And you can't expect that. Something's got to break it. Something's going to break. I mean, Ben Stokes is currently out because he's trying to look after his mental well-being, because he's on that treadmill. And I think obviously there's a temptation with administrators that you look at trying to rinse every last penny out of a spectator. You try and rinse every last thing out of a TV deal by putting games on every single day. And that's fine for us supporters, isn't it? Because we can watch cricket all the time from around the world. But as a player, if we're expecting to get the very best out of our players, then we need to give them a little bit of time off every now and again. We all get out of bed the wrong side sometimes. We all feel tired some days and don't give it our best. And if we're paying good money to watch players play, then you want them to be actually, well, one of the foundations of that is they need to be fighting fit, raring to go and keen to play. And I don't think that's always the case at the moment. And therefore, spectators in the way are getting shortchanged by that. So the players are getting tired, spectators are getting shortchanged, and the game is kind of on the verge of teetering off a cliff, isn't it, in a way? Because everything, there's just too much of everything. I mean, I was talking to an Australian the other day, and he was saying that they're having the same sort of conversations in Australia. The Big Bash has been extended to mirror the IPL, and
Exactly.
I found the Big Bash to go on far too long last time. But the Sheffield Shield has been marginalised off the back of that. It kind of, that's been shunted to the edges, and we need to be very careful about how we look after it. I've got nothing against the white ball. I love white ball cricket, and I want to see it played. I want to see a lot of it, but and I like the IPL. But we need to look after the red ball and the white ball, and we need to look after the players and the structure, the way we structure the stuff. The fixture list is key to that.
Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
the final question.
Yeah.
The final question, of course, everyone is asking who will win the Leeds Test, and if India wins this, I don't think it will be easy for England to make a comeback, and of course, they won't be winning the series. They will have a chance
Yeah,
to tie
and
the
adding
series.
to that, like, what are your predictions for this test? Like, will Virat Kohli scored his much awaited 71st century, and what will be the who will be successful or not, like, and all of that?
Do you know, as a somebody that works in cricket and watches a lot of cricket, I commentate on cricket, obviously podcast on it and what have you. I love seeing good cricket. The final result of this series is secondary to me to actually watching really good test matches. And the Lord's Test was brilliant. Wasn't at all bothered that India had won it. Even though despite the fact I'm English, it was just a really good test match, and that's good for test cricket and it's good for the spectators. But England need to bounce back. They'll have been hurt by that defeat at Lords because they were on top and they let it go. They've had 8 days in between matches to actually regroup and get the head straight, which I think is a good thing, because if it had been back to back again and they'd had to go straight into the next test match, that might have been, some of those scars might not have healed just yet. But I think they've probably had a bit of time away and managed to kind of add a bit of perspective to it, because ultimately it's a game, isn't it? And there are more important things in life, even though sometimes we don't feel it. So England do need to bounce back. As I say, it's usually a fairly high-scoring ground these days, Headingley. My experience of Headingley and watching matches at Headingley is that winning the toss isn't always the best thing, because often it's the best day of getting wickets in the first 3 is day 1. And the temptation is obviously to see a decent batting track and to win the toss and bat on it. But you can often see teams get bowled out a little bit cheaper on day 1. And then the best days.
England got out on 60 odd in the Ashes.
Yeah. And the best days, I think, for batting on it are generally days 2, 3, and sometimes 4. So it wouldn't be the worst toss in the world to lose and then see your opposite number say, "We'll have a bat," because you are then absolved of all responsibility. You can try and take a load of wickets, can't you? So that's something to look at in the first day. Excuse me. It's a really hard series to call this, because there is not a lot between these two teams. I think on their day, India can have good days. On their day, England can have good days. England are very reliant on Joe Root's runs. They need to see some other batsmen scoring some runs, just generally speaking, not just this series. It's been a trend for some time now. And you can't expect Joe Root to continue to churn out century after century, because nobody's ever done that in the history of the game. Everybody's got out cheaply at some stages, and it's just law of averages. Joe Root is going to get out cheaply at some stage. Even Don Bradman did. So other batsmen need to take responsibility. I think England's bowling attack is decent, and there aren't too many weaknesses in India. So it's a fascinating series from that point of view. I think this test might be a draw.
We just have a breaking news that Mark Wood is ruled out of this test match.
Yeah, it's not a surprise that they've left it as late as they can, but Mark Wood is also very important to England going forward, with the Ashes in mind as well, and the World T20, and he's got a history of being in and out with injury. So I would say, I mean, in the same way that in the run-up to the Lord's Test, Jimmy was suggested it was 50-50, but he passed his test. I think even if Mark Wood was 60-40 in favour, I'd still be tempted to give him a break, because there's a lot of cricket just around the corner, and they need to keep Mark Wood fit, because when it comes to the winter, he's going to be very important, especially with Jofra Archer out and Ollie Stone out. They need that fast bowler to be in that team in the Ashes. So that's not a surprise at all. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes.
Virat Kohli, I asked.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes at Headingley. I can't decide. I think it might be a draw. Virat Kohli is interesting because he's obviously a fantastic player, probably my favourite player in world cricket. But even though I moan about him, I'll have sometimes because he goes too far. But he's very, very good indeed, and he's great to watch. And I'd love to see him get 100, because I want to see a Virat Kohli century, and because they're good to watch. But he's not in great nick at the moment, is he? He was out first ball to Jimmy Anderson in the first test match. Despite getting 42 at Lords, he had to work hard for them because he wasn't flowing. So
what happened was his 22 was better than his 42.
Yeah. And I think, that might actually help him that he's got 8 days between test matches just to have a bit of a tinker. But obviously, the longer you go without scoring a big score, the more people start.
My only logic that Virat Kohli is going to score runs in this match is that his aggression came back last game, so his runs will also be back.
That's not a bad theory. That isn't a bad theory, because often the mindset and the runs go together. So yeah, I can see that.
Apart from that, what I've seen, the last time India played England at Headingley, I'm not sure, it was in 2001, I guess. Maybe they have played after that, but that was a run feast. 600 runs were scored by India when Ganguly, Dravid, and Lakshman. Though
That
that batch
happened on this
scored
day only. That happened on this day only.
today.
Yes.
Oh, so it was in 2000, back in 2001, I guess. India scored 600 odd runs. And do you think the pitch is going to be batting paradise, James?
Headingley is usually decent for batting on. Yeah, I mean, a lot depends. I mean, one of the things I think Indian fans miss sometimes when they, because I was critical of the Indian wickets in the winter because they were like dust bowls. They were. I don't think some of those were actually fantastic for Test cricket. Yeah, 2-day finishes potentially aren't great for Test cricket. And often Indian fans would fire back at me. Well, look at England's Test matches. Look at the pitch at Lords when India are out cheaply. It was moving around a lot and all that. A lot of that is about what's in the air. It's not about the actual pitch itself. I can guarantee you that the pitch at Headingley will be a good Test match wicket. Andy Fogarty and his gang at Headingley are very good groundsmen. What happens overhead, though, is a totally different thing. If it gets humid, if it gets cloudy, if it gets, a little bit of dampness under the covers at night and stuff, that can change things. So that is kind of out of the groundsman's control and away from the wicket. But the Test match wickets at Headingley are usually pretty solid and are usually quite good for batting on. If you bowl well, you can get a bit of reward. But generally speaking, if you bat well, you can get runs.
Okay. So
Yeah,
Arnab,
so let's
final
just
words
end the
and then
show.
we can wrap up.
Yes. Yes. So yes, thanks, James sir, for coming to our show today. We were really honored to have you. So till then, we'll meet you all in the next video. Any final words, James sir?
Arnav, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I wish you and all the Indian fans well. Not necessarily your victory, but I wish you all well. And I mean, to be honest, it would be good for the series, I think, if England either bounced back or if it was a draw, because we want this to go all the way through, don't we? 5 Test matches. Yeah, we don't want it to be a 4-0 to India. You might do, but I think just for the spectacle, we want a little bit of drama all the way
If we
through.
win 4-0, then it's very much already guaranteed that we'll reach the World Test Championship final.
Nothing's guaranteed in sport, Arnav. Nothing's guaranteed in sport.
Pretty much sorted that we'll reach.
That you can say, but as James sir said, nothing is guaranteed. Anything can happen any day and any team can beat anyone. You can't rule out. And I guess in the World T20, we are going to see a lot of suckers. Yes, it's still far away to talk about that. And hopefully James sir will again be with us. Guys, he had been with us previously also. You can go check out that video, and in our thumbnail we have given the details about James sir, about his podcast, about his Twitter handle, so you can check it out and follow him. And he's a great podcaster. So with this, we bid you goodbye. Hope you have a nice day, enjoy, and we will be coming with a special show again tonight. So meet you guys again.
So goodbye everyone, till then, goodbye, bye bye.